wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Everyone, thank you for joining our webinar today. First of all, Ramadan Kareem to everyone, and we at ICNA CSJ hope that you all are making the most of it in your homes. I know the Ramadan is not what it used to be. We know it's not the same. We all miss Taraweeh. We all miss going to iftars and things like that. But inshallah, there's a reason behind everything. So we're here, but we have more time to be with our families, to be around our loved ones, and to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the comfort of our homes every day. So we're hoping everyone is taking advantage of that, inshallah. So may Allah accept it from us and from you. As you all know, lots of changes has come in our lives because of the coronavirus. It's kind of turned our lives upside down. Things are not what they used to be, right? Everything is changing so fast. All the rules, the laws, how we do things on our everyday life, everything is different, right? It's not the same. And one of the things that has been impacted a lot is immigration law. And a lot of us don't know, how the coronavirus is impacting the immigration issue. And I know a family in Pakistan who's actually stuck there. They went there for a visit, and unfortunately, it was a time during when everything got shut down, and now they're stuck there for 3 months. They can't come back, and the kids are here. Some of them are really young, but they can't come back. There's no way for them to come back, so they're stuck there. And one of them is actually a patient. She needs her medication, and she has to see her doctor, but there's no access at all. She's just stuck there. And unfortunately, her kids miss her a lot too, but there's nothing they can do at the moment. So we have an expert. We have Afia Yunus here with us. She's wonderful, as you will hear her speak. She's an attorney. She's worked with us in the past. She's provided many valuable information to us. I'm going to give you a brief bio of who she is and her work and her background, and then from there she'll take it from there, and she'll let us know everything that we need to know about immigration law in light of coronavirus. So Afia Yunus, she's the founder of Yunus Law. She's an immigration law practice. She has her own immigration law practice with offices in Philadelphia and New Jersey. She represents clients from around the country and abroad in family-based and business immigration and removal defense. She has successfully obtained E-2 visas, national interest waivers, employment-based and family-based green cards, and she's also released people from detention and much more from her clients. So she's a very successful and talented attorney. She also delivers talks. She hosts Know Your Rights seminars, and she coordinates coalition building between minority and faith communities. In 2018, she successfully completed a fellowship with the Muslim Power Building Project. In that same year, she was selected by Billy Penn as one of the next great attorneys in Philadelphia, and she received an award of excellent leadership by Faith in New Jersey. In 2019, she was nominated for Activist of the Year by Rad Girls in Philadelphia. So before I let her come on, just so everyone knows, we do have live Q&A. So you can ask questions at the end. Just type them in. We'll see them here. If you're watching it from our website, icnacsj.org/live, there's a link we have on top. It says Ask Live Questions. Once you click there, it'll take you directly to the YouTube link of this video. And from there, you can type in questions. And at the end of her presentation, she will answer all of the questions live, anything that you have. So please make sure that you ask those questions. Okay, Afia? It's all up to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Again, Ramadan Kareem to everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Thank you all for joining us this evening for a very important topic. I always tell all my clients and everyone that knowledge is power in the realm of immigration. There is a significant amount of misinformation, and the current administration's goal to seed fear and uncertainty needs to be pushed back on with seminars like this. So I'd like to thank ICNA's Council for Social Justice, and obviously Ramiz for inviting me tonight. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Bismillah. So I wanted to start by kind of dividing up this presentation by agency. I find that to be the most the easiest way to digest the information. So starting out with Customs and Border Protection. So what are the overall impacts of COVID-19 and the pandemic on the immigration per agency? And that makes the most sense, and we'll end off with what everyone knows was passed on April 23rd by the Trump administration, the COVID-19 travel ban. So we will go over that as well. Starting out, the Canadian and US border, as well as the Mexican and US borders, have been officially closed. So those are the changes with Customs and Border Protection. They've been closed to all non-essential traffic. So what is essential traffic? The United States government has defined work as essential traffic. So if you are on a TN visa and you need to travel back and forth for work, or you're working here, many people come Monday through Friday and then return back to their home to Canada on the weekends. That will be considered essential travel, and you will be able to travel. Other than that, all access to asylum at the northern and southern borders has been closed, and only, like I said, essential travel is being allowed. Non-essential travel is travel for tourism and also travel for any recreational purpose. Now, the travel restrictions, this is what people are most concerned about, rightfully so. So I'm going to break this up into two very distinct sections, because there are two very distinct travel restrictions that have passed due to the pandemic. So first, we'll talk about the actual travel restrictions that Trump passed back in March. So those travel restrictions ban any foreign national from coming to the United States who had traveled to any of the impacted areas, and I'll explain what those are, within 14 days prior to travel to the US. Okay, so what does that mean? If we have an F1 student holder, considered a foreign national, not a green card holder, who went back home to Pakistan, but then decided to travel to either China, Iran, or any of the Schengen countries, which includes the UK. So let's say Adil went on an F1 visa, went to Pakistan, and then he went back to the UK to visit his aunt, and then he's trying to come back to the United States. He will not be allowed to enter. He is subject to the travel restrictions because he went to the UK within 14 days prior to his entry to the US. So there are three elements. Element number one is you're a foreign national. It excludes US citizens, lawful permanent residents, and immediate family members of lawful permanent residents and US citizens. Again, a foreign national who is not a green card holder, not a US citizen, and not an immediate family member of either of those. Number two, you traveled outside the United States. Number three, you went to an impacted country. And this is one of the 26 Schengen countries, as well as Iran and China. And number four, you tried to come back to the US within 2 weeks. If all of those are met, then you will not be allowed to come to the US. Those are the travel restrictions. How do these apply to lawful permanent residents and US citizens? So if you're a US citizen or a green card holder and you travel outside the United States and you visit one of these impacted countries and try to come back within 2 weeks, you will be allowed to enter. They will not prevent you from coming to the US, but you'll have to fly into one of 16 designated airports. And you can Google those, or you can ask, email me or email Ramiz, ICNA CSJ, and they can give you that information. Make sure you fly into one of those 16 airports. You will be subject to a secondary screening. So this is a health screening. They'll likely check your temperature and do some other health screenings. And then you will be let free to go home, but you will be subject to a 2-week self-imposed quarantine. Again, this is only for people who'd visited any of the impacted countries. They're the 26 Schengen countries, Iran and China. So only if you visited those countries will you be subject to the secondary screening and will be subject to a 2-week self-imposed quarantine. I want to make very clear, this only applies to people if they've been to the impacted countries. So if Adil only went to Pakistan on a student visa, went to go visit his parents, and then wanted to come back to the United States straight from Pakistan, these travel restrictions would not apply to him. Pakistan is not one of the impacted countries. India is not one of them. The only countries on there are the 26 Schengen countries, which are all in Europe, China, and Iran. Those are the travel restrictions. Those were passed back in March, and it's very different from the travel ban that was applied, that was signed 6 days ago, which I will also go over. Now, what is the travel ban? So 6 days ago, April 23rd, President Trump passed a travel ban, which I like to call, I feel like it's more accurately called an immigrant visa ban. This proclamation was signed by President Trump, and it prohibits the issuance of immigrant visas for 60 days, okay? So we're not gonna call it a travel ban, we're gonna call it an immigrant visa ban. So embassies will not be able to issue immigrant visas 60 days from April 23rd. Now, will this be extended? It is likely to be extended. The Trump administration left it open, and they stated that they might continue to extend that, but for now it will expire after 60 days. Who does it cover? It covers anyone who's applying for an immigrant visa who is outside the United States on April 23rd, okay? Who does it exclude? It excludes anyone who was already in the United States. It excludes anyone who had already been issued an immigrant visa before April 23rd. It excludes lawful permanent residents because they've already gotten their immigrant visa. It excludes spouses of United States citizens. That's a very important exclusion. And it excludes children of United States citizens. So if, let's say a different example, Mariam lives in the United States. She's a US citizen. She petitioned her husband in India. He would not be subject to the immigrant visa ban because he's the spouse of a US citizen. Mariam also petitioned her mom and dad in India. They would be subject to the ban, unfortunately, because parents of US citizens cannot be issued an immigrant visa in the next 60 days. Again, this is only for 60 days. It only applies to individuals who are outside the United States as of April 23rd and who did not already have an immigrant visa. Mariam also petitioned her, let's say she also petitioned her child, that person would also be excluded because they're a child of a United States citizen. It excludes anyone who's in the United States. So I've gotten a lot of questions about people who are in the adjustment of status process. An adjustment of status to that of a green card holder is very different from an immigrant visa process. If you are in the United States and you are in the process of adjusting your status to a green card holder, then you are not subject to this ban. It only applies to people outside the United States who are applying for an immigrant visa. So let's give our third and final example. We have Muhammad, who lives in Bangladesh, and he has an H-1B visa. Is he subject to this immigrant visa ban? No. An H-1B visa is a non-immigrant visa. This is an immigrant visa ban. It only applies to people who are applying for an immigrant visa, which is essentially a green card from outside the United States. It does not apply to non-immigrant visas such as an F1, H1, M1, E2, any of those non-immigrant visas. Okay, so I hope that was clear. There's a lot of misinformation about the travel ban, which I like to call the immigrant visa ban. And so I hope that was very clear for anyone. If you do have any questions about the travel restrictions or the immigrant visa ban, please put a comment or a question on the live feed and I will answer them. So we're gonna move on to USCIS. So USCIS is the agency that processes applications for immigrant benefits here in the United States. So if you're in the US and you apply for a work permit or a green card or to become a US citizen, USCIS is the agency that's going to be doing that. We've gotten word that USCIS is planning to reopen on June 4th. So that's great news. They have been closed now since the end of March. They are definitely understaffed. They were already understaffed, but now they're even more understaffed. So that's something to keep in mind if you're going to be calling the National Customer Service Center, their 1-800 hotline. You can expect very, very long delays. I'm talking 6, 7, sometimes 8 hours on hold waiting for an agent. All interviews from, I believe, March 23rd until June 4th have been rescheduled. So what does this look like? You are going to receive a notice, an I-797C notice that states your interview has been canceled. This notice will not contain a new date. No need to panic. They're stating that they will send us a second notice that actually has the rescheduled date. And unfortunately, I have many clients for whom I receive these notices. I'm anticipating the new interview dates to be months out. So this applies to anyone who had a naturalization interview, if you had a green card interview, if you had a fingerprint appointment for your work permit, if you had an oath ceremony, all of those will be rescheduled and you will get a second notice that's going to tell you the new date. If you have office-specific question, like for example, you have an application that's been pending at a particular USCIS field office, you can contact me and we do have access to specific information on how to reach out if there's an emergency. If your I-94 is about to expire, so let's say your stay is about to expire, but you can't seem to get a hold of USCIS, the recommendation by USCIS is to go ahead and file an extension of stay or a change of status, either one. Keep in mind, this has to be filed significantly before your expiration. So don't wait until the last day. This is because we're not getting receipt notices in the amount of time that we used to get them. So if you file an extension of stay today, you may not get your receipt notice for a few weeks. So if your stay is about to expire, you might want to consider filing an extension of stay. Keep in mind that an extension request on a work permit will automatically give you an additional 240 days to work if you file that prior to the expiration. The key is you have to file, so mail the application to extend your stay or change your status before your I-94 expires. So that's the key. Another really important point is USCIS has extended the deadline on RFEs and notices of intent to deny. What does this mean? If you received a request for additional evidence on any application, so you filed for your wife, you got an RFE from USCIS saying, we need the nakah-nama, the marriage certificate is not enough. They usually give you a deadline. So if you've received a request for evidence, a notice of intent to deny, a notice of intent to revoke, any notice from USCIS that requires a response, they're giving you an extra 60 days from the deadline. So if your deadline in the notice says we have to receive a response by October, by let's say May 1st, they're going to grant you an extension of 60 days as a grace period due to the coronavirus pandemic. Very important is, as some of you know, the Trump administration expanded the interpretation of the public charge rule back in January. So we've gotten many questions from clients asking about whether treatment for COVID-19, whether receiving public funds for that would be considered against them. So USCIS has stated in a formal statement that any treatment or preventative care or testing for COVID-19 that's paid by the federal government will not be considered against you in the public charge determination. So when you go to apply for your green card, They won't ask you if you availed of the free testing or if you availed of any preventative treatment or care for COVID-19. Another question about unemployment benefits. Unfortunately, many people have lost their jobs and they've had to apply for unemployment. Unemployment benefits are also not considered as part of being a public charge because they are considered earned benefits. So you can go ahead and apply for and hopefully get, I know many people are still not actually receiving those benefits, but go ahead and apply for those unemployment benefits and they won't be considered against you when you go to apply for your green card. The second another agency we're going to be discussing is visa processing. So the Department of State is the agency that processes visas abroad. And you also may be familiar with the National Visa Center. So they're the clearinghouse for receiving your civil documents here in the United States and then sending your file abroad to the embassy who's going to process that visa. As of right now, and it's been about 6 weeks, that most embassies, if not all of them, are closed to routine services. They have canceled all routine immigrant and non-immigrant visa interviews as of March 20th, 2020. So it's been over a month now that embassies across the world, US embassies, have been closed and they're not scheduling visa appointments. So if you go in to schedule your visa appointment as a business immigration client, you won't be able to schedule that until probably sometime out. Keep in mind, if you've already paid the immigrant visa fee, so that's the $325 immigrant visa fee and the $125 affidavit support fee. If you paid both of those, the embassies are saying they will honor that for up to 1 year. Embassies are only taking emergency appointments. And an emergency is not that your visa is still pending. So an emergency is any type of health emergency, medical emergency, and keep in mind, immigration's idea of what an emergency constitutes, it's very different than what the average person considers an emergency. So just keep that in mind. The National Visa Center also stated that they have reduced staffing. They are not taking any regular inquiries on their online public inquiry form. You will have to wait until they decide to receive those. They are only receiving emergency inquiries on their online public inquiry form. As many of you know, the NVC wait time on the phone is quite long. Same thing with USCIS, same thing with NVC, expect to be on the phone for hours. And if your phone call is not with regard to an emergency, they will not field your call. If your immigrant visa is expiring and you are stuck abroad, so let's say Aisha petitioned her husband, or let's say she petitioned her mom, because this is quite common with elderly moms and dads. So she petitioned her mom got her immigrant visa back in January, but she decided that she doesn't want to come to the United States until July. Let's not say July, let's say May. She wasn't going to plan to come to the US on that visa until May because she needed to wrap up her affairs in back home. So she already has her immigrant visa. She's not subject to the immigrant visa ban because she already had it as of April 23rd. However, now she's stuck and she can't come here because there's no flights. So in that scenario, and I have had many people contact me about this scenario, you can contact the consulate. So you can contact the embassy in your country and let them know that your immigrant visa is about to expire, and due to, logistical, just no flights available, not able to come to the US, you need them to extend that. The consulates are able to issue you a new immigrant visa stamp, and they can do that so long as your visa is still valid and until the travel restrictions are lifted. Finally, last 2 points is immigration court. So this is the Executive Office of Immigration Review. It's EOIR. They're the agency that runs immigration courts. As of basically the end of, I believe it was April, beginning of April, all non-detained hearings scheduled through May 1st are going to be rescheduled and postponed. Courts are taking your filings by email. Some courts are still open for detained hearings. So you want to make sure that if you have a hearing before an immigration judge, that you look up that specific immigration court and make sure that you still have your hearing. You can always call the immigration court hotline. I don't want to misstate it, but you can find it online, or you can, I'm sure ICNA CSJ can provide that to you guys. And that's an automated hotline. It will let you know when your next court date is. And that way you will know if you've been rescheduled. It is a little bit delayed. So if your court date is coming up sooner rather than later, I would recommend contacting the immigration court by phone and calling them directly and finding out if your hearing has been rescheduled. Finally, detention. So detention is managed by ICE, that's the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They are releasing many people from detention who are at particular risk of contracting COVID-19, but right now it's still on a case-by-case basis. So if you have a loved one or you know someone who's being detained right now, you can contact the particular ICE office that's responsible for that jail or that detention center and petition to have your loved one released. As attorneys, we're doing that daily. So if a client is in a detention center and they're at risk of getting COVID-19, which all of them are, I mean, they're in very close quarters and it's impossible to actually social distance, that we're filing requests for release on parole. And some of them are being granted. So make sure that if you have a family member or loved one who's currently being detained, that you contact an immigration attorney and see if you can get them released. It's safer to be out than in. And right now, more than ever, there is a public health, public safety risk for them to be in detention. So that's all I have in my presentation today. Those are the relevant changes that have occurred. I do want to summarize and say that immigration is one of those areas that's constantly changing. Every single day we get new information from every respective agency. And then of course, from President Trump all the way down, things are constantly changing. So if you have an immigration application pending, if you are in the immigration system, I highly recommend you stay on top of the changes and get your information from reputable, valid sources. There is a lot of misinformation out there. The Trump administration leaks drafts all the time to kind of test the pulse of the public. So it doesn't necessarily mean that those drafts will become law. I know there are some drafts of different orders that have been released explaining changes to potentially the H-1B program. I would advise to stay away from drafts until they actually become law. And as they do become law, you can stay on top of it with ICNA CSJ or follow me on Facebook, and we'll keep you guys posted on all the changes. And stay safe. So now we'll go into the questions. We do have 2 questions. So one of them is, Salam, how can I get your contact information? I'm sure ICNA CSJ can provide that. But my website is www.yunuslaw.com. That's YUNUSLAW.com. I'm at Yunus Law PC on Facebook. So that's YUNUSLAW PC on Facebook. Or you can go to ICNA CSJ's Facebook page, and I'm sure that they've tagged me in this particular presentation. You can just click through there. Another question we have is USCIS currently working on petitions for immediate relatives at this time, or do we have to wait till June 6th when it reopens? So that's a great question. USCIS is still open as an agency, so they are processing applications and petitions right now. The only thing they're not doing is their field offices are closed. So you won't be able to get an interview scheduled, and you won't be able to go in for an InfoPass appointment. but you can still file your applications and petitions. I'm still doing it for my clients. The only thing to keep in mind is they're severely understaffed. So if you file, let's say, an I-130 petition for a loved one today, normally we would get a receipt notice within 7 to 10 days. I would expect to not receive one for about 2 to 3, maybe even up to a month before getting that receipt notice. An insider tip is they do cash the check before they even issue the receipt notice. So I always have my staff check the check. So if the filing fee check that you write out, if they cash that, if it clears, then that means that you're good. That means that they actually received and accepted the application, and you should get the receipt notice soon. Another question I received is, how can we get a stimulus check after filing my asylum claim? So in order to get a stimulus check, I can give a few tips about that. You do have to have a valid SSN. So if your asylum application is pending, unless it's been pending for the 180 days and you've gotten a work permit, you won't have a social security number. So you had to have filed your previous tax returns with a valid social security number. So that's your first hurdle. And also, if you filed with a spouse that has an ITIN, but you have an SSN, if you have an SSN, again, you still won't receive that stimulus check. So the government will deny the stimulus check to any eligible person with an SSN if they filed a joint return with a spouse who has an ITIN. So unfortunately, I mean, it's cruel and unusual punishment in my opinion, but if your spouse was, on some type of non-immigrant visa and doesn't have a social security number, and you filed a joint return with them, you won't be able to get your stimulus check. Another thing about the stimulus check is it won't be considered again in the public charge determination. So if you're eligible and receive it, cash it, use it. It won't be used against you when you apply for your green card. So I guess the follow-up question was, my asylum case is still pending. A really key feature of the asylum case pending is you don't have access to a work permit until it's been pending for 180 days. So if you do not have a valid SSN and have not filed your taxes, you would not be eligible for a stimulus check. Another question I have is, Assalamu alaikum, sister. What are thoughts about the fiancé visa process? I don't know what you mean by thoughts. I can give you, I guess, just general information. The fiancé visa is a non-immigrant visa. And I know that's confusing, but the visa is issued for the person to come here temporarily to get married. So it's a non-immigrant visa. So the immigrant visa ban that Trump signed last week, it does not apply to fiancés. It does not apply to fiancé visa applicants, okay? Fiancé visa applicants can still go forward. The only issue you're gonna run into is they're not scheduling routine non-immigrant visa appointments right now. So there's going to be a significant delay. And when I say delay, I mean the Department of State processes thousands of applications a day. So keep in mind, the queue for the immigrant visa appointment is being delayed every single day by that number. So anticipate months and months, if not, it's really sad to say, but if not years of waiting for an immigrant visa interview now. Another question is, are interviews on a first come, first serve basis? Yes, they're always on a first come, first serve basis, in the sense that once you become documentarily qualified by the National Visa Center, so the NVC takes all of your documents, and then when they determine that all of your documents are in order, they usually issue you a letter saying that you're documentarily qualified. What that means is you're placed in the queue for the interview scheduling. That queue is first come, first serve, and it will remain that way. I have another question. We're in Djibouti, Assalamu alaikum, and my mom has received her visa, but my dad is still saying issues since 3/19. My question, when the embassy reopen, is my dad going to receive his visa? Possibly what happened, and this is me just making an observation based on experience in your question, is that he was supposed to get his visa, but the embassy closed. What I would do is that specific embassy, you can email me, afia@yunuslaw.com, and I can find out what their procedure is during the COVID-19 pandemic. Once they reopen, I would advise contacting them and asking them, what's the delay? If the online system is saying issued, it may have gotten stuck in the mail. It may have just gotten stuck prior to processing and they closed. The fact that it says issued makes me feel more comfortable, instead of it saying rejected or denied or administrative processing. So I would continue to contact the embassy, especially once they open, and see what's happened. Also, make sure that your mail is appropriate, because sometimes it may have gotten issued, or if it was done through the mail and you guys just didn't receive it. I have another question. Can my spouse apply for a visitor pass at this time? He lives in Palestine. That's a tough question, because with Palestinians, nationality makes a big difference. So I would have to know what nationality he is. But visitor visas right now, like I said, they're not scheduling non-immigrant visa interviews. So he or she would not be able to apply for a visit visa right now. First of all, the visit visa interviews aren't being scheduled. And second of all, there's no flights coming into the United States. So I would wait until COVID-19 is over and save your $165. The visitor visa costs $165. So I would wait at least until the embassies are reopened and he can find a flight before applying. And I think those are all the questions.
Yes, I think those are all the questions. Okay. Okay, someone's thanking you. Okay. Okay, so as you know, it's almost iftar time as well. So we're gonna end it here, inshallah. So we'd like to thank Sister Afia. She's always available. She's always willing to come answer questions, and she always does a wonderful job of giving a presentation and getting all the information ready that people need to know. So thank you so much for coming, and thank you for continuing to do what you do. And it's great to see, one of the Muslim sisters who was part of the immigration law, atmosphere. So we need more lawyers to come forward, inshallah.
Inshallah, thank you.
So we thank her for coming, inshallah, and we hope everyone enjoyed it. Please share this webinar with your family and friends. And as always, we do this stuff for free. So please do go to our website, icnacsj.org/donate, to make a donation so we can continue to provide these services and we can continue to help you, inshallah. So Jazakallah khair for coming and joining us, and we'll hopefully you will also join us for another webinar that we're doing tomorrow on another issue, but also related to COVID-19. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.